I always figured I was the smart one, the one calling all the shots. So when I casually threw out the idea of an open marriage, trust me, it wasn't me being all modern and progressive. Nope. It was pure, calculated manipulation. I was just so sure, completely convinced that he was too, well, dull, too undesirable to ever find anyone else. My grand plan? Oh, I'd get to have my fun and he'd just stay put. Simple. And then he met her. And just like that, my perfectly crafted little world didn't just crack. It shattered, blew completely apart. Before this whole catastrophe, our marriage, at least from the outside, it seemed fine. We had a comfortable life, sure. Clyde, well, I guess you could say he was a good man. Steady, predictable. But in my head, that all just translated to one thing: boring. I was itching for excitement, for that spark I felt had fizzled out ages ago in our relationship. Or maybe, just maybe, a spark I'd deliberately snuffed out myself with years of subtle digs and not-so-subtle takedowns. I was restless, and if I'm being brutally honest, I felt superior. I kind of saw him as this harmless, almost sad little guy, someone who should just be grateful for me. I was the prize. Or at least that's what I kept telling myself. This constant dissatisfaction, this deep-seated arrogance, that's where my disastrous idea really started to take root. I genuinely, truly believed he was incapable of attracting another woman. Boy, was I ever wrong. The whole open marriage thing didn't just pop into my head as some quick fix for mutual boredom. Oh no, it was a carefully crafted plan, born from my own selfish desires and a massive, massive underestimation of my husband. I was bored, absolutely, but more than that, I wanted freedom without any of the downsides. I wanted to explore, to feel desired by other people, to inject some thrill into my life without actually giving up the comfort and security Clyde provided. And how I saw him? That was central to this whole scheme. Clyde was just Clyde. He was the sensible shoes of husbands. Reliable, yeah, but hardly the kind of guy women trip over themselves for. Or so I completely believed. He was quiet, a total homebody, more into his books and documentaries than a wild night on the town. He wasn't classically handsome, didn't have that magnetic charm I saw in other men, the men I was actually interested in. So I brought it up one evening, trying to sound all breezy and sophisticated, which I totally wasn't feeling but acted out like a seasoned pro. "What do you think?" I started, swirling the wine in my glass just so. "About, opening up our marriage?" I spun it as something modern, something for evolved couples who were secure enough to explore. I think I even had the audacity to say it could reinvigorate us, knowing damn well the only thing I wanted to reinvigorate was my social life. His reaction? Pretty much what I'd anticipated. Confusion, a little flash of hurt in his eyes that I just chose to willfully ignore. He asked if I wasn't happy, if he wasn't enough. I brushed it off like it was nothing, a speck of dust. "It's not about that, darling," I'd cooed. "It's about personal growth, about experiencing more of what life has to offer, and bringing all that richness back into our lives." The manipulation was just laid on thick, sweet like poison. Honestly, I didn't actually think he'd take me up on it, not seriously. I figured he'd eventually reluctantly agree, and then just do nothing. The rules were unstated, but in my mind they were crystal clear. I'd be the one exploring. He'd be the one waiting at home. Maybe a little sad, but in the end, still there. That was the silent, one-sided deal I'd written in my head. My arrogance was astounding. I see that crystal clear now. I saw him as an accessory to my life, not a real partner with his own feelings, desires, or, the potential to actually surprise me. For the first few months, everything went exactly as I'd so cleverly planned. I jumped into the dating scene with this energy that, looking back, was almost frantic. I went on dates, had some flings, and just soaked up all that attention. It was intoxicating, this feeling of being wanted, of being new and exciting to someone. Every compliment, every suggestive look from another guy was like a little hit of validation, making me feel even better about my decision and, more importantly, confirming how I saw Clyde. And Clyde? He did exactly what I thought he would. He moped. He seemed utterly lost. He'd ask these half-hearted questions about my nights out, and I'd give him vague, breezy answers, totally dismissive. I saw his quietness not as him being in pain, but as solid, undeniable proof of how undesirable he was. See? I'd think to myself with this twisted little smirk of satisfaction. Who would actually want him? My smugness just ballooned every week. I felt untouchable, so incredibly clever. I was living my best life, or at least that's what I kept telling myself while he was just there, a fixed, predictable point in my universe. I didn't rub his face in my activities, not right away, but I wasn't exactly hiding them either. There was a new swing in my step, a certain carelessness in how I talked about my evenings out with friends. I remember this one guy, Daniel. He was everything Clyde wasn't. A bit of a bad boy, incredibly charming, adventurous. The thrill of that affair was intense. I'd come home, practically glowing from a night with Daniel, and see Clyde reading in his usual armchair. Sometimes I'd feel this tiny, quickly squashed pang of something. Guilt? Nah, more like a detached sort of pity. It only made me feel even more superior. I was the one out there experiencing life, while he was just passively letting it drift by. Or so I wholeheartedly believed. I was so caught up in my own narrative, my own supposed brilliance, that I was completely blind to the slow burn of change that was starting to ignite inside him. I'd opened a door, and I was far too arrogant to think he might actually walk through it and find something, or someone, so much better on the other side. The first clue that my carefully constructed world was about to get seriously shaky came pretty subtly. Clyde started doing things. Little things at first. He joined a gym. He mentioned, almost casually, that a coworker had invited him out for drinks. I didn't think much of it at first. Good for him, I thought, giving him a little pat on the head in my mind. Let him have his little attempts at a social life. My confidence was still sky high, totally unshakable. Who was he going to meet at a work happy hour, right? Please. Then he got quieter at home, but it was a different kind of quiet. Less mopey, more preoccupied, busy in his own head. He spent less time in his armchair and more time on his laptop. He even bought a few new clothes. I noticed, of course, but it just didn't click what it all meant. Or maybe I just stubbornly refused to let it. My inner voice was still stuck on repeat, insisting he was inherently undesirable. The first real crack in my smug facade showed up when he mentioned he'd been on a dating app. He said it so casually, so nonchalantly, almost like it was no big deal. Just to see what's out there, since we have this arrangement. I remember forcing a laugh, a really brittle, hollow sound. Oh, you? On a dating app? That's cute. But inside, something twisted. Not jealousy, not yet. More like profound annoyance. This wasn't part of my perfect plan. This wasn't how it was supposed to unfold. He started being home less on weekend afternoons. Vague excuses. Met up with someone for coffee. Went for a walk with a friend. A friend? Clyde didn't really have friends outside of a few token people from work. That little flicker of unease started to grow into a persistent thrum. It was around then that I, in a moment of what I can only call panicked damage control, casually suggested that maybe we'd had enough of this open phase. It was fun for a bit, wasn't it? I'd said, trying to sound light. But maybe it's time to refocus on us? He just looked at me, a long, hard-to-read expression etched on his face, and said, maybe. But there was zero enthusiasm, absolutely zero in his voice. The power dynamic, which I'd so arrogantly assumed was locked firmly in my favor, was subtly, almost invisibly starting to shift. The ground really, truly fell out from under me when he told me about her. Sarah. He didn't confess it all teary-eyed or racked with guilt. No. He told me calmly, matter-of-factly one Sunday morning while I was nursing a splitting hangover and he was making coffee, looking more vibrant and alive than I'd seen him in years. "I've met someone, Judy," he said, his back still to me, "and it's getting serious." I remember just staring at his back, the words taking a long second to cut through the dense fog of my own self-satisfaction. Serious? What do you mean serious? This whole thing was supposed to be casual, fun. My voice came out sharper, more panicked than I meant it to. He turned then, coffee cup in hand, and his eyes were clear, steady, unwavering. "It started that way, but Sarah, she's different. We connect. I'm happy with her, Judy. Genuinely happy." Happy. He used that word, a word that hadn't really been part of our vocabulary about us for a very, very long time. The shock was like a physical punch to the gut. I literally felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't just him finding someone. This was him finding happiness. With someone else. The smugness, the towering superiority I'd nurtured for so long started to crumble around me, revealing the terrified, insecure person I'd tried so desperately hard to bury. The real devastation hit a few weeks later. He sat me down, the way people do right before they drop the most terrible news. "Judy," he began, and I just knew. I knew. "I want a divorce. I'm leaving you. I'm choosing Sarah." I couldn't wrap my head around it. But this was my idea," I remember stammering, the sheer unbelievable stupidity of that sentence completely lost on me in that moment. You weren't supposed to actually find someone. You weren't supposed to leave." The words just tumbled out, a torrent of disbelief and pure, undiluted panic. My carefully constructed game hadn't just failed. The supposedly helpless pawn had checkmated the queen. The arguments that followed were ugly. I pleaded, I raged, I accused him of betraying our arrangement. An arrangement I had kicked off for my own selfish kicks, never once thinking, not for a second, that it might actually give him a real shot at something better. He just stayed calm, firm, resolved. He was a different man from the one I thought I knew, the one I had so carelessly, so contemptuously written off. The world hadn't just tilted. It had flipped completely upside down, and I was in absolute free fall. The divorce was quick, clinical even, cold. He moved out, and soon after, he and Sarah moved in together. From what I hear, they're happy. Like sickeningly, blissfully happy. And me? I'm alone. I got the open marriage I pushed for, all right. The irony isn't just bitter, it's this constant choking thing in my life. I played a stupid, arrogant game thinking I was the only one who knew the rules, and I lost. Big time. Monumentally. It wasn't just a husband I lost. It was my home, our shared history, the comfortable predictability I'd secretly relied on even while I was constantly complaining about it. I lost my self-respect, or maybe I was forced to see that it had all been an illusion, built on the flimsy, rotten foundation of putting someone else down to feel better about myself. The brutal shock of him leaving forced me to really, truly look at what I'd become. A manipulative, arrogant person who treated her partner like absolute dirt. I had believed my own hype. I thought I was so desirable, and he just wasn't. The universe, it seems, has a pretty twisted sense of humor. That statistic I once laughed at, the one about open marriages having a high failure rate, some studies from a while back even said something like 92% ended in divorce. Well, I'm part of that statistic now. Turns out, relationships built on lies, manipulation, and a fundamental lack of respect for your partner aren't exactly built to last, whether they're open or not. The freedom I wanted so badly now feels like a desolate, empty prison. I asked for an open marriage thinking he couldn't find anyone. He did. And then he left me for her. The biggest, most catastrophic miscalculation of my entire life. And I have absolutely no one to blame but myself. This wasn't some game, it was my life, and I completely, utterly wrecked it.